are one. When my boot comes down on your neck, we are one. That's right. Piano solo. Do you feel it? I feel it. It's got me by the feels. So bad, baby.
I was going to make this video before the election, like yesterday, but I decided that I should do it today, after the election. I want to talk about this. I don't like talking about this stuff at all. I used to tell my dad, all the time that this was pro wrestling. It was the equivalent of pro wrestling because what we were getting was basically the same. I want to talk about wings for a minute. People believe that they're a right wing or a left wing, and they really see it that way, a flat plateau with two sides. But that is not the way it works. Kamala Harris is a Bolshevik, and I mean that. As sure as you're born, she is a Bolshevik. But the problem is, you have the other side, the Neocons and the Republicans, that have become wild cards. And the problem with the wild cards, the Republicans, is that no one ever notices when they do something very authoritarian. What we need are people that guard the Constitution. As imperfect as it is the best thing that we have. And the Constitution is really a self-governing thing. We don't need more laws. We have the Constitution, and the rules are basically, if I'm out and you are out and we are in the same place, we can both yell, we can both dance around, we can both do whatever we want, as long as you are not stepping on someone else's toes. And I can't come over and pull things out of your pockets, and you can't do that to me. People want to be left alone. And that's what forces people to go over to the side of the right. Because people want to be left alone, because people like Kamala Harris, Bolsheviks, want to be able to come in and do whatever they want to you. These people are authoritarians, but they are all authoritarians. Let me show you the reality of left and right. And I want to show you this because a lot of people have had the impression over time with me on this channel that I'm somehow right-wing. And I've had a lot of emails sent to me about, right-wing stuff. I'm not right-wing. I'm not on a wing. I don't have a wing. I believe in the Constitution because it is the best thing that we have. The only thing, and I want to state this to really, make this clear, the only thing worse or on the level of a Bolshevik is a neocon, because they really are just disgruntled communists. There are no wings. It's a big deception. So let's check out this graphic here. We have left wing, right wing. And that's what people picture, but it's not the case. So here is the reality of it. It is really a clock. You are not left wing or right wing. You are somewhere over here or somewhere over here. But there's a problem with the clock because we have 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock is total authoritarianism, where they want to come into your house. They want to govern you in every way possible. And they find ways to skirt around the Constitution. That is the problem. When people find ways, any of them, left wing or right wing, to skirt around the Constitution. Now, 6 o'clock is the danger zone. Anyone that chips away at this is dangerous. They're authoritarian. So you have what people believe are wings, but they're really over here at 6 o'clock. Authoritarian scumbags. Most people are here and don't realize it. If you want to force people to do anything, you are an authoritarian. If you want to enact ways to skirt the Constitution, you are an authoritarian. As I said before, as sure as you're born, you're an authoritarian. If you want to force people to wear a mask, if you want to force people to get vaccinated, if you want to force speech laws in any way, anything that chips away at the Constitution, the Second Amendment. I don't care about guns as much as I talk about them, but I care about the fact that people have the right to own them if they want to own them. That is my problem. Anything that chips away at the Constitution, that's a problem. We need people in office, like a real president, that will guard the Constitution, not quietly pass bills to chip away at it or to sidestep it in some way or another. So who has quietly landed at authoritarian scumbag? You know, people have a love affair with Ronald Reagan, and they always forget the things that Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan was the governor of California before he became president, and back then he passed one of the most restrictive gun laws that turned California into what it is today. And what that basically did was create like cool-off times, waiting periods, all this shit, and enabled agencies, all these three-letter agencies, to raid your home and do crazy things. This is what they do. And you have to be very, very careful of people pretending to be, you know, constitutionalists when their loyalties may lie somewhere else. It's a trade-off. When it becomes a trade-off, it's not good news. And they're all doing this. Whether they're left-wing or right-wing, they all end up at 6 o'clock at the authoritarian scumbag mark. Right here. Boom. You are here. This is Kamala Harris, the Bolshevik, telling you that she's going to come into your house and check out your guns. Force her way into your house. Check this out.
It's people who own guns who are quietly sitting on those guns. And
people who own guns are quietly sitting on their guns. She has a knack for salad.
Those guns might end up being the weapons of the destruction of a community because they get in the hands of some kid.
You know, they can only get in the hands of some kid if some kid is a delinquent and steals the gun. This country has had guns for centuries, man. And we didn't have kids stealing guns and going into schools and, you know, doing things or taking somebody out. So what has changed? That's the question you need to ask. What has changed? Let's let her keep going.
Who decides that they like what they see on television and they want to act that.
Kids watched World War II movies and way more violent movies way back. And no one ever did this kind of shit until recently. So what has changed?
So this is about just basically saying that we're going to require responsible behaviors among everybody in the community, and just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affair.
So we are going to come into your house and make sure that you are locking that gun up. This is insane. This is fucking insane, and she is a Bolshevik. But she got this far and could come out and say something like this publicly was because of the groundwork that Ronald Reagan laid. The facts. Because of what Reagan did, it got us to where a Bolshevik could do this. What we need is we need people like this to be terrified to talk like this, to be looked at as a lunatic when you talk about entering somebody's home. All of this because they are all sidestepping the Constitution. But it's not just left-wingers. In this video, I want to really emphasize the fact that I don't care what you do. If you want to cut your dick off and wear a dress, do it all day. Just don't come in and start telling my kid how great it is to do. There is lunacy behind all of this. It's not just these left-wingers that are talking and doing these things. These people are purposely trying to skirt and sidestep the Constitution with wellness checks and red flag laws, which both have an effect on free speech and have an effect on the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. Same with hate speech laws, gun laws. All of it is chipping away at the Constitution. It's an erosion. And you cannot treat symptoms. You have to go after the actual disease. Doesn't matter who you are, what side you're on. When you're doing that shit, you are disobeying the oath that you took at the beginning. And an oath is very, very important. Now here is a Texas Republican, Dan Crenshaw. It says, the solutions aren't obvious, even if we pretend they are, but we must try. Let's start with the TAPS Act. Maybe also implement state red flag laws or gun violence restraining orders. Stop them before they can blah, 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 blah. I don't need to read the rest. But the point is, here's a Republican talking about bringing in red flag laws and gun violence restraining orders. What does that do? It skirts and it sidesteps the Constitution. And you're not supposed to be able to criticize this guy because he's got one eye and because he's a veteran. He was a Navy SEAL. Fuck Crenshaw. Fuck this scumbag who has clearly and obviously attempted to erode the Constitution. We didn't have people doing this before, Crenshaw. So what has changed? The problems are not the guns. The problems are what has changed. Now, back after the event that happened in Las Vegas in 2017 with Stephen Paddock, he used a bump stock, allegedly. I won't get into all the details about that, but right afterwards, bump stocks were banned. Now, the ATF just got bitch slapped by the Supreme Court, and they have to give all them back now. So I was watching a video on that, and while I was watching that, I decided to read the fucking comments, and it was amazing. All of these people were talking about how it was Biden or Harris, and how we had to vote the scum out. They completely and totally have selective memory. Like a crazy selective memory. It was Trump that banned bump stocks and eroded the Constitution. Not Biden, not Harris. Here it is.
By the way, bump stocks, we're writing that out. I'm writing that out myself. I don't care if Congress does it or not. I'm writing it out myself, okay?
Of course Congress is going to do it. They're going to do anything they can. Each right they take away with a firearm, it gets us closer to a total ban. Back in the 90s, I can remember that they were only after handguns. The anti-gun people that I talked to would always be like, well, we just want handguns. Get rid of handguns and people can have all the rifles they want. But now that's not the case. Now they want your ARs. An AR is just a Lego rifle. That's all it is. It's just a rifle that can be easily taken apart. It's no different than any other hunting rifle. So, you know, it's always changing. But here is Trump taking away your bump stocks.
We've got to do background checks. If we see a sicko, I don't want him having a gun. And, you know, I know there was a time when anybody could have. I mean, even if they were sick, they were...
Yeah, and we had fucking gun clubs in high school, man, where kids took guns to class, put them in their locker, and no one got shot. So again, what has changed? But the point is, Trump did that. Not Kamala Harris, not Biden, and all these neocon retards are on YouTube leaving comments, vote the scum out. Let's take back our rights. Trump did it, you fucking nimwit. Now, I have to talk about this. Speech laws. Back in the day, there were Jewish lawyers who would represent hillbilly Klansmen. For real, they would represent them because we have to have free speech, regardless of your safe space or whatever. Because once one chip gets in the wall, it begins to crumble down. They're talking about Kamala Harris and Biden and these people taking away your rights to speak when Trump is the one who wants to bring in speech laws. And he did that in Florida already with the universities. We need somebody who is guarding the Constitution, not chipping away at it. As shitty as it is, you cannot have hate speech laws in the United States.
Kamala Harris has done absolutely nothing. She has not lifted a single finger to protect you or to protect your children.
We don't need to be protected from words. Anybody who creates speech laws is an authoritarian. And that's just a fact. You can't get around it. You're an authoritarian. You are back at 6 o'clock.
And it cannot be allowed to continue. We can't allow it to continue. We will seek their destruction.
It's not about the Jewish people. That's exactly what Vladimir Lenin did. The very first thing he did was enacted hate speech laws. In a communist country, neocons and new Republicans are disgruntled communists. That's what they are. And you really need to do the research on it to understand it. They're disgruntled communists. And when you have a hate speech law, there's going to be another law after that where you can't talk about this. Well, we've got this and this. Now you can't talk about that. And now you can't talk about unions. And now you can't talk about politicians in a bad way. And everybody begins to self-censor. When you self-censor, your mind, your spirit, and your creativity is crushed. No one should have to self-censor what they say about anything. If you don't like it, you walk away. You change the channel. The point is, all of these people are authoritarians. Every single one of them. And they're all doing the same thing. It's a choose your own adventure, but it ends the same. And I'll give you another example of this. Bush was elected. George W. Bush took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And then, in the middle of the 9/11 aftermath, a bunch of neocons had drafted something called the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act was from the Project for a New American Century, and it was brought to Bush, and Bush passed it, which totally and completely crushed the Constitution and got us to where people like Trump and people like Harris can talk about entering your home to look at your guns, to tell you that they're going to pass laws to stop you from talking, to ban little things that chip away and sidestep the Constitution. And Republicans all made these moves, man. And that's what no one realizes. They are small moves, but it laid the groundwork for these Bolsheviks on the other side to do their work, to do what they do, for Kamala Harris to do what she does. You know, and here's the bottom line. Anyone who wants to encroach on your rights is a tyrant and an authoritarian. Whether that be the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, or the rest of them. Once someone begins pulling that shit, they are not your friend. Now, this gives me the opportunity, since we're talking about sidestepping the Constitution, to weave in something that I talk about a lot. Here is Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon that were taken away from this couple after living with them for like 7 years or something. A long time. I don't remember exactly how long. But the government decided to raid them, raided their house with a search warrant, took the squirrel, and then killed them. Killed the animals, right? You probably know about this already. But I want you to see this. This is just a side note. Check out the couple.
It not only tears my family apart, but
see the woman?
It was the cornerstone of our nonprofit
Hear his
animal
voice?
rescue. And 10 to 12 DEC officers raided my house as if I was a...
She is clearly, truly upset, and his voice is shaking. Remember this. Always remember this. They are crying about a squirrel and a raccoon. It is very sincere. Remember this when you see psyops. Look how sincere they are about a raccoon and a squirrel.
Drug dealer. I was sat outside my house for 5 hours. I had to get a police escort to my bathroom. I wasn't even allowed to feed my rescue horses breakfast.
So remember that. Very important. Very, very important. They are completely and totally, truly upset. But what I want to talk about, anonymous tips are being set up everywhere now with text messages. Now, I've talked a lot about parallel construction before. Parallel construction is a very, very interesting concept. This is where they build a case or gather information on somebody without ever revealing how they got that information. This is a way that you can use technology. Now, I've talked a lot about this surveillance system that is at work. How do we really know that all of these anonymous tips are not coming from the AI surveillance system disguised as somebody? Just like bots and large language models are leaving comments on my YouTube channel and everybody's YouTube channels, they can be the ones sending in the tips. You have to be a scumbag fucking rat to use this in the first place, to rat somebody out for doing something that you don't like. But here's how it works.
Well, it's a new system that you could send tips through, and it's easy to use. All you need to do is grab your cell phone and you can send a completely anonymous tip. Since texting has become an everyday ritual, the Drug Enforcement Agency in the Valley is using text messages to make reporting possible drug activity easier. Assistant Special Agent in charge for...
Now, if you have an AI system that's listening to you, you can get right around the Constitution with anonymous tips. And when people wake the fuck up and finally realize what I'm talking about, and it will happen, You have Candace Owens talking about things that I've talked about on my channel for years, and now she's talking about it, but it's like light, the light version. You have Blair White, who has literally said what I have said in videos verbatim. Verbatim. I have a video called like coaxing a rabbit out of its hole or something like that. And she used my exact terminology on everything. When people realize that this system is at work and it is surveilling everyone, they're going to realize how all these anonymous tips are working. Now, this happened a while back, but a couple had 911 call on them because they got in an argument, and it was like their washer or an appliance that called 911 on them because they were arguing too loud. It was listening. And this AI system that I talk about is far beyond that. And I will leave links to a video below that shows you how it's at work and what it's doing.
McAllen Steve Jenkins says it's a step to make the community feel safe.
We're trying to get the
feel safe
message out to the community that, hey, this is available, and it's a way for them to help keep the streets safe.
Tip 411 is anonymous.
They have these now for guns as well. So go back to the SWAT rat video that I did about cocking and loading a weapon and the system recognizing that. Now think about that. It recognizes the sound. That's very easy to teach a computer to recognize a sound. Then think about a system that can rat you out when it hears the sound, let's say 10 times. It confirms it's a gun, just like a cell phone does. Probability that someone exited a car, 95%. Probability that there is a weapon in the house, 99%. That is how it works and what they're doing. And they're hiding it with this tip 411 bullshit. When I was in 6th grade, I had a teacher who made us learn about communist Russia heavily. And one of the things that he talked about was the party members. How the party members' students would get A's and B's and non-party members would not get the same grades. And he talked heavily about the fact that kids were very, very encouraged to rat on their parents if they were doing anything. And back then, it was mind-blowing that you would call on your parents about anything at all. You know, it's insanity. It really is. It's insanity. And now lawmakers have tip lines for children to anonymously report their parents for improper gun storage. Improper gun storage. You can report your parents. They are sidestepping the Constitution at every turn. And it's the right and the left. But all of these tips do not have to come from people, and you have to understand that. That when you have a surveillance system in place, and I'm not talking about just Alexa and phones and everything else that's listening to you, your television and all your smart devices, I'm talking about the surveillance system that I have talked about before. This is a full-on assault using parallel construction. But at least I was able to talk about something relevant at the end of this video instead of explaining the shenanigans of pro wrestling. All of it is a way to chip away at the Constitution. And the Constitution is the only thing standing in between them and a boot on your neck right now. That is the only thing stopping them. And weapons. As soon as you give them up, there will be a boot on your neck. And it's very important to pay attention to these tip lines and what they're doing, because no one has to be on the other end for these wellness checks, for these red flag laws. The question is, what is making the tips? What is sending the tips in? It does not have to be people anymore. You need to understand that. And that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
Come on, do Nazi stuff.
Yeah, why won't he do the Nazi stuff?
Look out for Charlie.